25 years ago, in my PhD, I envisioned a world in which companies could collaborate in a digital process. Nowadays, as a professor at the Antwerp University, I lecture how to achieve this with the help of market leaders like Marvin. With the technological advances of the 21st century, creating a paperless office is a realistic goal. And yet, most organizations still document processes the old-fashioned way, with document analysis, interviews, manual process documentation and discussion. But as systems and data are growing exponentially, the question arises, is there not a better way to accelerate process design? This is where process intelligence comes in. The ability to visualize an organization's processes and all the existing variations based on an event log is a game changer. In order to set up process intelligence in a stable and repeatable way, at least 4 things are needed. A tool for continuous data analysis, a methodology to establish how the company is organized in a constructual sense, standards that support the process and collect information to be managed, and library descriptions that define the digital model of products and services. The promise of process intelligence is radically enhanced efficiency, reduction of operational risks, improved customer journey touchpoints, and increased productivity. Want to know more? Click here for more information.
So I hope you enjoyed that fantastic animation video from Professor Dr. Hans Mulder. I'd like to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Hans Mulder. Welcome, Hans. Welcome back.
Great to be here. Excellent.
Great. Glad to have you here. So just for all of you who don't know, Hans is not only an incredible researcher on this particular topic, he's also an executive professor, as you can see, at the Antwerp Management School. And on top of that, part of the Standish Group, and a lecturer even at the Police Academy of the Netherlands. And the list goes on and on. So Hans, thank you for joining us today, and I'm really excited to hear your presentation.
Great, excellent. Okay, let's start.
Let's start.
This is the title for 2020, Go with the Flow. So the Standish Report 2020, which is just released, says you have to learn from the past, learn from your projects, but you go into flow. And that means that you have to focus on the good sponsor, the good team, the good place, and surrounding that, the decision latency. Making fast decisions in real time makes your organization real time.
And Hans, before we move on, I think it's good for the audience to understand a little bit more about the Standish Group. Now, I'm a little bit familiar, but I think some of our members may not know exactly what it is you do there.
That's correct. Therefore, I prepared a next slide, Laura.
Great.
And the Standish Group started in 1994 with doing research on IT projects. And we started that by measuring the success, the challenged and the failed projects. Nowadays, we have a database of more than 120,000 case studies, and we focus on the last 5 years. That is 50,000 projects. So on a statistical basis, you see this kind of graphs over 25 years, and what we have seen is that the number of failed projects is almost constant. While we have introduced many new improvements, like working agile, working, let's say, DevOps, but what we also see is that it has to do with the human factors. So if you don't have a good sponsor, if you don't have a good team, and you don't have a good place, and a good place meaning the right tooling, the right way of having communication in place, then you will be on this average. What we have also seen, and that's I think much more interesting, is that you don't only see these averages, there are also projects which create much value. So it is not only about looking at the failed projects, it is looking at the value factors, and then you can see you can increase towards, let's say, 90% success. So that is interesting, I think, not only for me, but also for you and for the audience to have a little deep dive into those data, because it can learn us much more about how to go forward and scale up with your digital transformation.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, so I see here you've defined 3 areas, successful, challenged, and failed?
Yeah.
What are the differences between those?
Yeah, well, actually, the success is within budget, within time, on target. But what we have seen is that you could have a project which is not on budget because it exceeded 10%, but it delivers you 100% more value. So you have to have a modern perspective on success.
Yeah.
This is the traditional one. So we also take into account a different definition, the modern definition, which states within budget, within time, to satisfactory. And that is also important, that you can see what is the outcome, because most of the success is predetermined. And I'm doing it according to the contract. But you need to look at the outcome, of course, for your customers, for your partners, for your organization. Yeah.
And do most of the companies that you take this data from, are they recording that? Are they recording how satisfied they are with the outcomes? Or how do they
How does
do
it
that?
work? Well,
Yeah.
first of all, it is very interesting to ask who is answering this question. If you are answering the question by the CFO, he would say, good project within budget. When I ask it to the CIO, he would say, well, okay, on target. But if I would ask the employees, and they say, well, I don't work with it, we would say this is a failed project.
Yeah.
So what we have seen is it is not only the assessment in the database, it is the analysis we do, and regarding that we can see very special things. We can see, for instance, that nowadays all the projects are agile. But if you're looking at the characteristics, agile projects of 1,000 employees working for more than 3 years without interaction with the customer, we consider that agile name only.
Yeah, agile name only.
Indeed,
New
indeed.
introduction.
So there's a real treasure behind this data. Yeah. So we don't only use these case studies, we have focus groups, we have all kinds of meetings. So we want to be sure that we are looking at the right things. And then it came to our, it just came out grounded, as the grounded theory, that the human factor is the most important one.
Yeah. And challenged projects. So there's a middle ground here.
Yeah, there's a middle ground, is the yellow line.
And there's failed, and what's a challenge project?
Well, the challenge project actually is most of the time that one of the parties is not that satisfactory because they didn't get what they really wanted, because it was over budget, because it was too late. So this is also has to do with almost 50%. 50% of those projects are challenged. So yeah, if you could have the ideas how to improve that, you can really change the business. Yeah. So we continue with the next slide, because I really like to do this. So what I've already told you before in the introduction, and now again, is that if you're looking at the good sponsor, the good team in a good place, and you will be very mature as an organization, so you will be capable of handling setbacks, you are able of handling incidents, and you are able to apply new ways of thinking and working, then you are high mature. And if you are high mature, your success rate can increase up to 87%. So that is interesting.
Wow.
That is wow.
That's the group
So how that is the one you want to be part of.
of.
And by the way, only 2% fails. It's not coming into production. So what it is then that the good sponsor does? What it is that the team achieves? And what is the good place? So of course we have a full report on this, but I will give some, let's say, clues about what we have found in those data. If a good sponsor is looking at a digital transformation project, it is not about technology. It's about changing your organization. And you have to look at the road ahead, otherwise you drop off into the cliffs. So if you are a good sponsor, you are going to help your teams by stating, we are going to that and that direction. And there's a roadblock, so please take another U-turn, go back. That means you have to be involved as a good sponsor. It doesn't mean that you are there all the time, because then you become a kind of project leader. No, but you have to be there. You have to understand that you are in a digital organization transformation. The team has to be a team, and that is of course very simple to say, to be a team. What is a team? They have to know each other. They have to trust each other. We have seen that some projects start and they don't even know their forenames. So the people have to learn how to operate. And just like in an operating room in a hospital, you have to do it, let's say,
coordinated way.
Exactly. So that is also, and you can measure that. You can measure that. There's no doubt about it. You can see, has this team ever worked before? It's a simple question.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Yeah.
What were the results? How did they operate? What did they do? So there are also things you can improve in advance. Yeah?
Okay. And I have one more question before you move on. I know there's
I
one more.
know. Yeah.
I'm wondering, now that we're living in a time where essentially digital working is becoming the norm,
Yeah.
do you expect that to have either major positive or negative impacts on particular the team aspect? Because like you said, we're thinking about it in the way that people need to know each other. They need to have adopted certain ways of working, at least internally.
Yeah.
How are we going to do that digitally? Can we do that digitally?
Yeah, that is so interesting. Therefore, I said go with the flow. So when we were confined to the rooms, the brick and mortar, we had to be there from 8 to 5 or even longer. We were working as a project team. Nowadays, you're working from home. You're working anywhere, anytime. Yeah? And it means that if that team is really capable of communicating about the project, then you have a kind of platform underneath it. So you don't have major project, you have micro project, you have nano projects. Actually, we are leaving the way of doing projects in the past. We're going to the flow. You don't order a bottle of water, but you just tap the water.
And get it out of the tap.
Out of the tap.
Okay.
And that means that you need to have a community-based approach. It also means that you need to have a fact-based approach on your data. And I think that is the reason I'm so happy to be invited in this place, because it is about imagine. And in the past we had to imagine, how does it work if you are not in a single room as a team? Now there is no way of
no more imagination now.
This is the real thing.
This is it.
But it also shows to me, and these are early signals. So this is, as a researcher, we are now a little bit on the forefront of new research. We see that organizations who have their knowledge, their competences and their teams in place, organized by a platform, they are outperforming the others. So this will be, I think, a new report.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is because it is so interesting. So interesting. Yeah. So we continue with another slide.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. So this is one I really much like, and these are the sections in the report, the Chaos Report 2020. So I give you a little glimpse already of this report, and it calls Bullseye. And Bullseye means if my project is going to be successful, I have the definition that what I say in advance has to be delivered. That's Bullseye. And now when we look at the data, this is very interesting. Say I'm very precise, so I'm just in the bullseye. The high value is only 7%. Huh? That's odd. I thought this is wrong.
Surely it'd be higher.
Should be higher.
Yeah.
If you are distant from your original goal, your value can increase to 16%. So, the Stengers Group, considering all these aspects of projects, were thinking, what is happening? What is wrong with the data? What is wrong with the data?
Yeah.
But actually, if you only achieve what you predefine in advance, you won't get more. And if you're able to say, this is not a project, this is flow, we are in a transformation, and we're going to see just during our project what we can increase in value, your value will increase. So this is contrary to everything I've learned at university, but I have taught all the students, so sorry for that, many years, but this is very interesting. So the bullseye perspective, if you are looking at digital transformation, should be, yes, we have goals, we have a vision, but please still think about it each time you're going to do a next step, because otherwise you will be too precise and you don't get more out of it. Yeah, that's interesting.
And does that also have anything to do with, I mean, we've sort of made the transformation, you talked about it earlier, the difference between waterfall and agile.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with that?
There is, I think, an evolution in the way in which we started with the projects.
Yeah.
We started as the business is given, we just support it, and we need to be precise, so we need to do it in advance. The technology is not that well equipped, so waterfall in those days, I think, was a very good progress. Agile now doesn't mean only agile in the IT, it means agility, it means resilience. And actually, if I would look at these days we are in now, we're looking at anti-fragile. Anti-fragile means you have to be more valuable during the chaos. And that means that you are really looking at this perspective of the goal. Who could have expected that this crisis would come? It would come. It was mentioned before. It is not a black swan. It is a white swan. But you never know when it comes.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you have to be prepared. And that is in your system. So you need to have a good place. You need to have a good team. And you need to have a good sponsor. You see?
It comes back to the same thing.
Same
I
thing.
get it.
Well, we had hundreds of criteria, hundreds of things. But people said this is too much. So we had to condense it into those 3 factors of success. But if you want to know more, of course, there is more to do about it. Like the complexity of projects. And what we can see, for instance, if you have multiple locations, multiple stakeholders, it will increase your complexity. And when we're looking at digital transformation, it's all about that. Because it is not only your own organization, it is your organization within the environment. So, yeah, that will be helpful. And then we see on the right side, we see the guidelines on size. And if you have a small project, therefore we are really going towards flow, that is small in the sense that you have 10,000 hours of labor. But if you're looking at the grand projects, that are the projects who fail the most. So indeed, to answer your question, we need to be more agile in that respect.
And what would be an example, in your experience, of projects that are these large and grand projects? What's a
Well, about 6 years ago, I was asked by Parliament to give my opinion on this in a public hearing. And I gave some examples of large governmental projects. And that was really something that was in the newspapers, yeah.
And what types of things are they trying to achieve? So clearly there's a ton of hours going into it, but what are they trying to do?
Well, let's give an example outside Europe. Let's give an
There
example.
we go.
That is much more easy for me.
Exactly.
So when we look at Australia,
Yeah.
far, far away, they need to have their employees giving a salary. And that system that costed more than $1 billion Australian dollars.
No.
Yeah, and because it was so huge, they weren't able to deliver it on time and of course on target.
Yeah.
So some people, when it got live, got too much and
no,
some
it wasn't even right.
got too little. But when they got too much, they couldn't refund their salary. So they get discounts in the months after that. So
no.
I think that is a real grand project.
That
And you
is-
should really be aware of that. And in our opinion, you can optimize it. It is not needed to be that big. So you see here the size, complexity, that is still one of the most important things to do. But if you're looking at the real reason why they are grand, why they are complex, is because a good sponsor would never allow that. And if you are very ambitious, you are very much, oh, it doesn't matter how much it costs, yeah, then it becomes big.
Funny.
Shall we continue for another one?
Let's go.
Yeah? Okay, great. So what I was talking about was that you have agile and you have waterfall. And if you see here the differences, they are almost 3 times. So that is really something. But I also told you that agile in name only is good for business, but bad for your organization. So you have to look at a couple of things. Agile means you have a good sponsor. Agile means you have a good team, and agile means it is not agile all the way, and then we're going to see thousands of agile projects. You need to, once again, to have a good place. And then on the basis of a good place, you can have micro projects, nano projects, and they are, as a characteristic, agile, because they involve the people who are doing the work are capable of changing their work. It is human-centric. So I talked to you about the human factor. That is something which comes out of the data. If you are capable, not just saying, well, IT department, make me a new system. No. I want to improve my work. I want to help my customer. And by the way, IT is very helpful, then you are in a good team. Yeah. So yeah, and then you also see that the small projects which are agile, they have the least chances of failure. And why is that? It's so simple actually. If your first sprint is not successful, you just lose a few weeks.
Yeah.
If you're going for the grand projects, you lose $1 billion.
Yeah, that's the difference.
So I think you have to fail, but you have to fail fast, and you have to repair, and then you go ahead. Actually, you learn. So agile is learning to become better, learning to become agile. So simple. Yeah.
So simple.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue to the decision latency, because that is something which we discovered when doing research at those large organizations. And we have seen, for instance, that for a change request in the project, it could take about 6 weeks to return. That means that you cannot be agile, because in those 6 weeks, you don't going to wait, of course.
No.
You go ahead on the basis, perhaps, on a decision which is not what you expected. And you have to remove all the work you have done. So then you're coming into a really swamp-like project. So it is better to have a fast decision, which could be not accurate, than having no decision at all. And that means that we are looking at decision latency, which is the time between action and response. You can see that in a good decision latency, only 4% of those projects from the database are considered failed.
And the difference between good and poor decision latency?
Well, the
time are we
latency
looking
is
at?
timing.
Yeah, so how much time
Timing. And actually it is really coupled to a continuous.
Okay.
So if you're saying, well, this is one project and we have once a month, we have a meeting and then we're going to go ahead, then you are in a way in which it is a project which determines your decision latency. If you're going to say no, in our perspective, in a good place, it is also making a pipeline of decisions. You can anticipate on decisions to come.
Yeah.
So why not take it to the front? And it means, in that sense, your action will be very fast. And of course, then when you're doing the production, well, it's not what you wanted. You only lose 1 week, you lose 2 weeks, and you go back and you go forth. So decision latency actually is a precondition of being a real agile organization. And you can measure that. You can measure all kinds of things. You can see, I sent the email and I got response 6 weeks later. You can measure that. There's no thing about it. And you can learn people to be more aware of that. Yeah? How the decisions are being distributed. Are they on the same page? Because that's also very important. So yeah, this is one thing I think, if you're looking at transformation, making the right decision doesn't mean that you have to take all the time of the world. The best thing is to take a decision which is capable of being executed and, if possible, can be resolved and can be rolled back if you want to.
Yeah, like you said, move fast.
Move fast.
That's a priority.
Because the environment is moving fast.
So true.
So true, eh? So actually, yes. And then the effects, when we're looking here at the effects, well, they are huge. Eh? So what does a decision cost? We never take that into account. But if you see a project with that many labor hours and you have that multiplied with a fee, and you would say, how many times do we need to wait for a decision? How meetings do we have? You can see that if your skills are poor, you almost lose your entire time and budget on discussion. And if you are very fast and you're very to the point, it only takes you 10% of your budget. So therefore what you can see, and I compare that with a taxi, if the taxi is in front of my house and I don't step in, it costs me money. And if I say go, it costs me the same money, but then I come somewhere. So what you see in this part is, it is very important to have your decision fast, but also efficient. And that really leads to high skills, lead to less failure and more success.
So step in the taxi. That's what you're
Step
saying.
in the, go with the
Just
flow,
go.
do it, do it, I think that we are almost at the end of my presentation, if that's correct, like this. And I think it is very interesting to see that there is a connection between this research and the things we are seeing here. So let's imagine, because that is the thing we are going to do, let's imagine that we have a real-time, fact-based analysis on our processes, on our products, on our customers, on our partners. We have that, and consider that as given. And you have a methodology and standards to do it real time. Well, that means, if you're going to do at the following, you are mining the treasures you already have. You know the processes, you know your products, you know your customers, you know your vendors. And if you mine that, you can looking at the redesign part of it, and you can improve it. And that means that you are really an organization which is digital in essence. And before, I couldn't imagine it, but now we're all working from home. My students are working from home and I lecture them. I'm doing my research from home. So now is the time to say, let's mine, design and improve.
And I think, Hans, you've made it really clear today that most important things that we need to be thinking about are having good sponsors, good teams, and a good place.
Yes, indeed.
So that's foremost in my mind, and I know us as a technology vendor, we're oftentimes thinking about the technology we provide people as being most important. And of course, it's great to have you here to remind us it's really all about the people.
Yep.
But I'm still curious, what is your experience in the difference in technology? Let's just say I've been confronted with that now that we're working from home.
Yep.
Some products are more
helpful than others.
We were just talking
Well,
about
that
this.
is the third part, the good place.
Yeah.
So people is good sponsor and a good team, but the place means, have I a place in which I have a collective memory? If I still each time have to change my software because now I'm using product X, Y, Z, and the data is all everywhere and nowhere, then I cannot be on a continuous scale. So the good place, in my opinion, is very much supported by technology. And that makes a huge difference. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. All right, well, thank you, Hans, for your time. It was much appreciated and fantastic to learn about the good sponsor, the good team, and the good place.
Thank you,
Never
Laura.
forgetting that again. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.